the fluid is going to vibrate as a result of your movement of your head or your movement of your body. That will result in the generation of electrical impulses that is recognized by the brain, and as a result you have either the vestibulo-ocular reflex, with your head movement, your eyes move, or you have the reflexes on the extensors so that you can maintain your balance. So the inner ear consists of two compartments. One is the bony labyrinth. So the bony labyrinth is basically the bone. So in the petrous part of the temporal bone, you have this bony structure, which is the cochlea. Then you have the central part, which is the vestibule, and then you see these three semicircular canals. So one is this bony labyrinth, and within the bony labyrinth there is another duct which is called the membranous labyrinth. So you have bony cast of the cochlea, the vestibule, and the semicircular canal, and within this bony cast you have a membranous tube. So within the cochlea you would have the bony cochlea, and then you have within the bony cochlea a duct which is called the cochlear duct. And then in the vestibule you would have two ducts which are called the utricle and the saccule. And then in the semicircular canal again you have the three semicircular canals as a duct. So you have a bony part of the internal ear which is formed by the bony mold of the petrous temporal bone, and then you have within that bony part the membranous tube, and that membranous tube is cochlear duct. Within the vestibule you have utricle and saccule, and then in the semicircular canals you have the semicircular canals. So remember, this is the most important concept, that you have a bony part of the internal ear which is called the bony labyrinth, which is a bony cast of the structures of the internal ear, and within that bone you have a tube, and that tube is called the membranous labyrinth. So the bony labyrinth is complex cavity in dense bone of pars petrosa or petrous temporal bone. So you can see this blue thing is the bony labyrinth. And then within the bony labyrinth, you can see this tube. You see this orange tube? This is the membranous labyrinth, which is basically a duct inside the bony labyrinth. So in the cochlea, you have a cochlear duct. Within the vestibule, the osseous vestibule, you have the two ducts which are called utricle and saccule. And then in the semicircular canal, the bony semicircular canal, you have membranous semicircular canals. Okay? So first we are going to look at the vestibular system. So we are going to see the bony part of the vestibular system, and then we are going to focus over the cochlea, and we would first look at the bony osseous part of the cochlea, and then we are going to look at the membranous part of the cochlear duct which is inside the cochlea. Okay? So what you are looking at, this is a complete bony labyrinth. So this is cochlea. So you can see the cochlea is basically having 2 and 3/4 of a turn. This is the basal turn of the cochlea, and this is the apical turn of the cochlea. So this one is the basal turn. Then you have the middle turn, and this is the apical turn of the cochlea. Then this part is called the vestibule. This part of the bony labyrinth is called the vestibule, and these are the three semicircular canals. If you look at the semicircular canals, the anterior and the posterior semicircular canals are basically placed at across the petrous temporal bone. So petrous temporal bone is like this. You have seen in the middle cranial fossa, the petrous temporal bone is like this. So anterior and posterior semicircular canals would be across the long axis of the petrous temporal bone. So the long axis of petrous temporal bone is like this. Anterior and posterior semicircular canals will be across the petrous temporal bone. So if you imagine that this is the petrous temporal bone, so the anterior semicircular canal would be forward, posterior semicircular canal would be back. The part of the semicircular, there would be one opening of the anterior semicircular canal which you are seeing here, opening separately, and similarly the posterior semicircular canal opening separately into the vestibule. But one part of the anterior and posterior semicircular canal will join and then open into the vestibule. So you have the two anterior and posterior canal, semicircular canals across the long axis of the petrous temporal bone. One part of them would join and then open into the vestibule, and there would be separate openings of one part of the anterior and posterior semicircular canal. On the other hand, the lateral semicircular canal is horizontal. So it is going to lie in the horizontal plane with the petrous temporal bone. So this is the petrous temporal bone, it is lying in the horizontal plane with the petrous temporal bone. That's why this part of the lateral semicircular canal is going to bulge into the medial wall of the middle ear cavity, because it is lying. It's just above the promontory. You see a canal of facial canal, and you also see a bulge of the lateral semicircular canal. So you can see this bulge is formed because you have these lateral semicircular canal lying in a horizontal plane in the long axis of the petrous temporal bone, and that's why part of the lateral semicircular canal is going to bulge into the medial wall of the middle ear cavity. And it is going to have its openings, both openings which you are seeing here. So now total of 5 openings will be there in the vestibule. One is for this opening, this is the joint opening of anterior and posterior. This is the third opening, and the 2 openings of the lateral semicircular canals. So in total you would find in the posterior part of the vestibule there are 5 openings of the semicircular canals. So what you are going to see is in the vestibule you would have a recess for the oval window. You would have the recess for the oval window, which is called recessus ellipticus, and then you have the recess for the round window, so it's called recessus sphericus. So recessus sphericus means round, and the recessus ellipticus means oval. So there is an oval window, round window. This will make a bulging within the vestibule. You have the 5 openings of the semicircular canals, and you have an opening of the cochlear recess. This cochlear recess is going to open into the posterior cranial fossa. Now what you need to understand that there is a fluid between the bony part and the membranous part. So the bony part, we said it's made up of bone, and then inside that bone you have the membranous part, which is the duct inside the bony part. Between these 2 parts there is a fluid, and that fluid is called the perilymph. That fluid which is lying between the bony part and the membranous part is called the perilymph. Okay, so the perilymph is a fluid which is lying between the bony part and the membranous part, and it is an ultrafiltrate of the CSF. So we don't know exactly how the perilymph is formed, but we think that it is an ultrafiltrate of the CSF, and through this cochlear duct, it is going to drain into the posterior cranial fossa. So what you have is in the between the bony part of the vestibule and the membranous part of the vestibule, there is, and similarly in the cochlea also, between the bony cochlea and the membranous cochlea there is a fluid, and that fluid is called the perilymph. And perilymph is basically supposed to be thought as an ultrafiltrate of the CSF. We don't know exactly how it is formed, but we think that it is formed as an ultrafiltrate from the CSF. We have talked about the openings. So there is the fenestra vestibuli, cochleae, 5 openings of the semicircular canal, and aqueduct of vestibula. Yes. From a cochlear aqueduct of cochlea, it is going to drain into the posterior cranial fossa.
Doctor, doesn't this cause the spread of infection from the ear to the cranium?
It doesn't really, is responsible for any infection to transfer. But if it gets infected, definitely it has a communication with the cerebrospinal fluid. Yes.
What's the fenestra vestibuli for?
Yeah, fenestra vestibuli is a small duct which is connecting the part of the vestibule with the semicircular canal. But leave that; it's not that important. What you need to remember in terms of the vestibule is that there is an aqueduct of cochlea which opens through the internal, near the internal acoustic meatus, through the internal acoustic meatus into the posterior cranial fossa, and that is draining the perilymph. So the perilymph get absorbed through the aqueduct of cochlea into the cerebrospinal fluid. So we have talked about the 3 canals, semicircular canals. We said anterior, posterior, and lateral. Each of these canals have an ampulla, or the dilated portions. The ampulla is the dilated portion near the entry into the vestibule. There is a dilated portion which is called the ampulla, and the ampulla has the sensory receptors there. So within the membranous tube there would be within the ampulla, which is the dilated portion of the semicircular canal, you would find the receptors for positional sense. So we are going to talk about it in a minute once we are going to show you the 3 semicircular canals and the fabrics. If we look into the structure here, we will see this is the bony labyrinth, and then in the bony labyrinth we said there is perilymph, and then within the bony labyrinth you have the duct system. So you have the cochlear duct, you have the utricle and the sancule here. This is the endolymphatic duct, which we are going to talk later a little bit, and then you have the 3 semicircular canals. So this is the interior, this is the posterior semicircular canal, and this is the lateral semicircular canal. You can see the dilated portions of these semicircular canals. They are called the ampulla. This is the vestibule, and within the vestibule you have the oval window, you have the ampulla of the semicircular duct. This is the utricle, this is the sancule. So the portion of the duct just next to the cochlear duct is the sancule, then you have the utricle, and then you have the semicircular canals. This is the endolymphatic duct. So endolymphatic duct would carry the endolymph, because the fluid inside the membranous part or the membranous duct is called the endolymph. So the fluid between the bony part and the membranous part is called the perilymph, and the fluid within the duct system, the membranous duct system, is called the endolymph. And the endolymph is going to go into the posterior cranial fossa through this duct, which is called the endolymphatic duct. And this endolymphatic duct is attached to the junction of the utricle and sancule. So your perilymph is going to drain through the aqueduct of the duct of the cochlea, aqueduct of cochlea, which is a duct from the bony part. and there is another duct which is opening, which is carrying the endolymph into the posterior cranial fossa, and that is called the endolymphatic duct. So this is the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is going to the internal acoustic meatus. Now we are going to talk about the balance first. So the balance, there are two type of balances which you are going to make. One is the linear motion and the other is the rotatory motion. So for the linear motion, you remember that utricle and the saccule are important. So the sensory organs within the utricle and the saccule are important for the linear motion, for the balance during the linear motion. Balance during the rotatory motion is mainly the function of the receptors within the ampulla of the semicircular canals. So there are receptors in the utricle and saccule, and there are receptors which are present in the ampulla of the semicircular canal. Linear motion, the balance during the linear motion is the function of the utricle and saccule. And to maintain the balance during the rotatory movements or circular movement, you need your semicircular canals. Now, first we are going to talk about the receptors within the utricle and the saccule. So you have the receptors which have these hair cells, and these hair cells are called and these hair cells have these specified modification on their upper margin, and these modifications are called stereocilia. And over the stereocilia, what you have is the otolith membrane. So there is otoliths, or the small calcium-based crystals which are lying over the top of the stereocilia. And when you move right or left, the endolymph is going to move. And as the endolymph is going to move in the utricle during the linear motion, right or left, it will result in movement of the otolith over the top of the stereocilia. This results in generation of the electrical signals from these receptor cells, which will pass into the vestibular nerve. So what you are seeing here